Welcome. Thank you for joining us today on Forum 360, where we have a global outlook from a local view. I'm your host, Leah Love, and today we have Robert DeJournett, who is going to talk to us today about elevating Akron through diversity and inclusion. He is the newest Vice President of Opportunity and Inclusion for the Greater Akron Chamber. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit how you got this role, and congratulations on this role as well.
Well, thank you very much. This was a tough decision for me, having been at my previous employer for 30 years. I was the system director for community relations and diversity for Summa Health. And so healthcare has been my field for the last 30 years. So this is really outside my comfort zone, but I really felt really compelled and kind of called to this work because I feel that at Summa made some very good strides in diversity and inclusion in the healthcare arena, but this role really helps to reach outside of healthcare throughout the entire community. And I felt that I could make a greater impact on the community at large, especially when it comes to economic development, which is an area that I was not very familiar with. So that's how it kind of came to being.
So, speaking of with the chamber, what was their reasoning for creating this position? What did they realize of why they needed this position in this role?
Well, this role was actually created not so much by the chamber, but it was a collaborative effort with the Elevate Greater Akron initiative. And so it's a partnership between the city of Akron, the county of Summit, the chamber, and the GAR Foundation, which is a unique collaboration in cities. And there was a study that was done with these four organizations to just look at economic development across our Greater Akron, Summit County area. And there was a lot of research done, and that research proved that they needed to put together a strategy. In that research, there were 8 findings, significant findings. And among those findings were information about economic development as it pertained to the African American community. And in those findings, the research showed that systemically, African Americans have been left out of opportunities. So in order for our economy to really thrive and survive, we need an economy where everyone could benefit. And that's how the role kind of came into being.
Absolutely. So some may feel that diversity and inclusion are the same thing. Can you explain those or define those for people who may not understand what that is?
Right. Big difference. Diversity in just a few words. Diversity is the mix, differences, different people, and inclusion makes the mix work. So you can have diversity without inclusion, because you can have a diverse group of individuals, perspectives, but if everyone at that table doesn't feel included, then you're not really making that mix work. So diversity is defined as the differences that make us unique, and that is inclusive of the things that we all have in common, which is race, age, gender, those type of things. And then you have education level, you have marital status. So there's a number of other different things that makes up diversity. So it's a wide array of different things.
Okay, all right. So what does diversity mean to you personally?
Well, to me, diversity really just means that we're different and we're the same in certain areas. But what I really try to stick my flag in the ground on is the inclusion part, because everyone should be able to be themselves and bring to the table where they come from, whether it's their faith background, whether it's their educational background, whether it's just the way they were brought up. And as long as it's done in a respectful way, because I believe that everyone has something to give and everyone's voice should be heard, especially when decisions are being made, so that you're looking across every aspect of diversity and everyone feels like they're included and their opinion does count.
Yeah. I know sometimes it is hard to remain yourself in certain situations, boardrooms, things like that. You know, if you have a faith, moral ethic in a decision that needs to be made, and sometimes you get a little nervous about speaking up because it may cost you something in the long run.
Yeah.
But that perspective helps certain situations as well. So being able to have that openness for people to be able to be themselves is important.
Yes, and I think we need to create that environment where people do feel like they can be themselves, regardless if we agree or disagree. We can agree to disagree, but at least if I'm at a table, excuse me, I want to be able to feel like my voice is really being heard, whether, we move ahead with certain suggestions or not, but as long as that voice is being heard and is really being listened to and not just being heard as patronizing, but we want to hear what you have to say before we make these decisions.
Absolutely. So we've seen and heard some talk about Elevate Greater Akron. Can you explain to us what that is?
Elevate Greater Akron, again, is that collaborative partnership. And out of those 8 findings, there were 5 strategies that were birthed. And those strategies are business retention expansion, and the county is leading that strategy. Opportunity Akron, the chamber is leading that strategy. Spark Akron, that's involved with startups and entrepreneurs. The city's leading that strategy. The other strategy is refocusing on urban neighborhoods, and that the city is leading that strategy, looking at development and even in our various neighborhoods throughout the community. And the 5th strategy was Elevate Akron, and that's really around research and where is our ecosystem at, assessing our ecosystem, involving some of our universities, and are we going to go with polymers or patents, and how all that stuff works together. And all of those strategies, though, we're looking at those through a lens of diversity and inclusion.
Absolutely. Now, in September, there was a inclusion summit, correct? Can you tell me what the summit was about and what they released as far as information there?
Yeah, well, the summit was really the kickoff of this work. Again, it was a collaboration between the city, the county, the GAR, and the chamber, and we shared the inclusion narrative. So it really shared the research, and it was focused and targeting our business community, particularly those in decision-making roles in the business community. So we shared the information, and it was an eye-opener because what the information really showed, that we have to work together as an economy, as a business community, in order so that everyone could benefit. So if you have the largest population in your community, which in Greater Akron, the largest ethnic population is the Black population, and Summit County it is as well. But if you have that large population that's being left behind out of opportunities, it's going to affect the whole economy. So I think it's not just the moral thing or the good thing to do, but it's the business case for inclusion. And when I say inclusion, I mean being intentional and deliberate about being inclusive. And the business community, as a business community, if we're going to move ahead, we have to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to benefit.
So maybe the head of an organization might ask you, how do I begin to make that transition or that change without making people tokens?
Yeah, nobody wants to be a token.
Right.
But I think each organization has to do a deep dive at what does it mean to that particular organization. So they really need to look at within their organization, really historically, how some practices and policies came into being, whose voices were at the table when those policies were created, and then really look at the areas that will help them grow as an organization. Because, I always say with diversity and inclusion, when we talk about economics, all money is green, and everyone wants to make sure that their bottom line is being met. And the best way to ensure that is to make sure that every voice is counted, that we're not having the same old practices, because our whole community, the demographics is changing, and how do we meet those demographics in a way that everyone could benefit?
Now, if they are at a loss, I guess, at the beginning of this research process, and they want to find more diverse candidates, are there resources that will help them in finding those candidates?
Yes, there are a lot of resources. I think when you're looking for more diverse candidates, I think individually organizations need to look at where are they really looking, because we hear a lot that, okay, I'm looking for diverse candidates, but I can't find them. So my question is, where are you looking? Are you opening yourself up to different avenues? Are you looking at some professional organizations? Because say, I'll just take healthcare for instance, looking for social workers, and you want to make sure that you have a diverse pool. So there's organizations such as Hispanic Social Workers Professional Group, Black Social Workers Professional Group. So are you extending those opportunities through different networks? Because a lot of what happens when you're hiring, the networks stay within. So if you have 75% of a certain population that lives in a community, a lot of those opportunities will stay within that community. Mm-hmm. So if you're not reaching outside those communities to make sure the pool is populated with the best quality talent, and you're choosing the right individual, because you can have a good pool of folk, but you want to make sure that you have quality individuals to choose from, and whether they're Black, white, Hispanic, mm-hmm. we just want the smartest and the best talent. Right?
Well, thank you. If you are just joining us, we are talking to Robert DeJournett, who is the Vice President of Opportunity and Inclusion for Greater Akron Chamber, and we are talking about elevating Akron through diversity and inclusion. Okay, so let's get back a little bit more to your specific role in the overall strategy for Opportunity Akron. So tell me a little bit more about how, it's one thing to try to change an organization, mm-hmm. but you want to change the community. Mm-hmm. That's a whole different beast, quote unquote. So what is your plan for that?
Well, the plan is to get as many people involved as possible, because if we don't have the right involvement, and if everyone does not have skin in the game, the process will really be in vain. So Opportunity Akron, that strategy is really focusing on closing that gap in economic development within particularly the Black community, but because we believe that if we can make strides in the largest excluded community, which is the Black community, all the other affinities and communities will benefit from that, whether it's the LBGT community, whether it's the people with disabilities or physical challenges, all those communities will benefit. Mm-hmm. Because one thing about it, no matter what affinity that we're focusing on, race is still a common denominator in all of those affinities. So Opportunity Akron really, we have developed, it's kind of, I would say, a two-part plan. One is focused on the business community within the Chamber of Commerce, and the other is looking at the community at large when it comes to opportunities for procurement, minority businesses, and the like.
Okay. Now, some of the programs that you have are Explain Good Jobs Neighborhood Roadshow. Mm-hmm. That's one.
Now, Good Jobs Neighborhood Roadshow is a collaboration with all the partners, but it's being co-led by Connexus NEO and the Chamber. We're just kind of helping facilitate, because if I could just back up a second, for Opportunity Akron, the Chamber's role for Elevate Greater Akron is like the project manager, the collaborator general, to make sure that all the pieces and parts are working together. So Good Jobs Roadshow was actually created because of the Amazon coming into our community, because we know that there's going to be 1,500 jobs that need to be filled. They're paying a wage of $15 an hour, and we believe that that will affect the community at large, because there's some organizations that are paying less than $15 an hour. So what would that do to those organizations? Is it going to pull? We don't know from some of those organizations. So the Good Jobs Roadshow is really to give information about Amazon and their hiring practices, but also share other opportunities within our community of other organizations who are hiring as well. So what we look at as a good job is, paying at least $15 an hour, $15 to $20 an hour. But we're also looking at some promising jobs and we look at a promising job as a job that might pay 12 or 13, but it has a pathway to get to one of those good jobs. And there's a mid-tech strategy that's part of that, because there are a number of manufacturing, healthcare, and IT jobs that are entry-level positions, but they pay really good wages. So how are we preparing those in the community to make sure that they have an opportunity to bid on or vie for some of those jobs? And also, we're with this road show. I don't like to call it a road show because it's not really a show, but this effort that we're trying to get out into the community, we want to also ensure that there's some upskilling opportunities, because individuals may not have some of the skills that are required to go into some of these jobs. So with Ohio Means Jobs, working with them, working with the Akron Urban League, working with the NAACP, our school system, and there are a number of organizations that have opportunities where individuals can get these skills so that they can make sure that they have the qualifications for some of these jobs. So the Good Jobs effort in the community is going to help bring a lot of that information to different communities, because sometimes people are not coming to say the job center to get opportunities. So we're going to take this to the community, and it's a collaborative effort with a number of partners.
As a business owner, I've had other conversations with other business owners and wondering how the new Amazon Center would affect the rest of us as small business owners has been a concern of ours. So it does sound like that's something that we should make sure we get involved with the chamber as a small business, to make sure that we are aware of everything that's going on, but being able to provide those opportunities and benefits to people to help draw as well, being a viable candidate or employer, I should say.
And the chamber works for its members. We have over 1,500 members, and our job is to make sure that we're working on behalf of our members and actually making sure that our members know some of these opportunities that are out there, and how can we help our members grow as well. And we have a new chamber with new leadership. And
that's what I was going to ask you. Explain to us, for those who they've heard chamber, but they may not understand what the chamber is and what it does for them and how it can benefit them.
Yeah, well, I'm learning a lot myself. I haven't been there only 6 months. But our CEO, Steve Millard, is really proactive in getting the word out about the chamber, and he's been on a listening tour for the last 18 months, and he's been really listening to the community and hearing some of the things, how the chamber can shape its operations to meet those needs. And actually, we're coming out with a new benefit package for our members, and one benefit that our members can take advantage of. We have an insurance plan with a MIWA that if you're a part of the chamber, you will have access to that. There's a cybersecurity initiative where you'll have access to that. And we really want to hear from our members so that we know that we're meeting those needs, because the chamber might not be for everyone, but for those who we think can get something out of it, we want them to come and find out what we have to offer and really help us shape some of those benefits as well.
Now, some of the other things that you have are like the roundtables, and those are for development as well?
Well, what we're creating through the Opportunity Akron plan is a business owners, what we call employer roundtables. And what that is we're about 6 or 7 individuals from the community, chamber staff, urban league, a couple small business owners will get trained to facilitate these groups. And these groups will meet probably over a 9 to 12 month period, small size groups, and it's a safe place. And the groups will come and first they'll do like a little check-in and find out what's going on with the individual businesses, probably 10 or 12 in a group. And what these groups will do is that they'll check in and identify some of the challenges, some barriers, and some successes that they're experiencing. And then as a group, they will come together and say, okay, let's prioritize these challenges or barriers or successes, and let's talk about those and how we can help one another. So it's peer-to-peer, looking at how to help one another, and we'll also bring resources to the group depending on some of the things that come out of their conversation, so that groups are helping each other to grow and to prosper and to share successes.
That is truly one of the things that I learned over last summer, just being able to share experiences with other business owners, because sometimes people don't understand what it is that you're going through, or you don't think that they understand because they're not necessarily in the same field or whatever the case may be. But it's very good even just to have that diversity of other industries that are all talking together, because you get to learn a lot to help your business grow in a different way that you didn't necessarily understand. So that is awesome. So tell me, if you could leave the community with something to ponder about diversity and inclusion, what would that be?
If I could leave our viewers with something to ponder about, it would be to ensure that whatever you're working on, that you have different voices at the table, and to be intentional and deliberate about that, because that's when I think we'll gain the most out of whatever effort we're trying to put together or to work on, just to ensure inclusion is a part of that, looking outside of just the regular core group, but getting different perspectives.
And as far as saying it's a benefit or it's really good for the community, if you could paint a picture of what that really looks like, as far as when we have everyone together and everyone's voices and everything, if you could explain that in a picture for us, how would you explain that?
I don't know about a picture, but how I explain that is that if we are ensuring that diversity and inclusion is a part of and ingrained in the fabric of what we do, you wouldn't have to have initiatives like this, because it will be a fine-tuned, oiled machine working together, that everyone takes ownership of their area of being inclusive. And if we can do that, I think our community will continue to grow and be, in which we're on the road to be, a community around the country where people will come to us and ask, how are we doing what we're doing? Because our economy is growing. Everyone feels like they are have input in that. So just take ownership individually, and look at some of our unconscious biases and be aware of those biases, and not allowing those biases to affect our decision making.
Okay, and then last question. For those, how can somebody examine themselves to start to begin to see what type of unconscious bias that they have?
Well, there's a lot of unconscious bias trainings, initiatives out there, and I know that one that we're working on as a community is the Intercultural Developmental Inventory. It's IDI, and the mayor, the city of Akron, has spearheaded this and leading the way. The bunch of folk have been trained as facilitators, and the mayor, his whole cabinet went through. I think APS took a group through. The Akron Zoo has taken a group through. And this inventory really helps individuals look at themselves. And what I love about this inventory is that part of it is each person has a developmental plan that they work on, and that developmental plan will cause them to look outside of the normal and get outside their comfort zones, to look at and recognize some of those biases and how those biases could potentially affect our decision making when we're making decisions on what we're going to do and who we're going to connect with. So the IDI, you'll hear a lot more about that. Actually, there's another training coming up in the next month or so, and you can contact the Greater Akron Chamber or the City of Akron for those who want to be trained as facilitators for this IDI inventory.
And thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, because I know with the new role, everything is just going around crazy.
Yes, ma'am.
But thank you for that. And if somebody wanted to reach out to you, how could they contact you?
They could contact me at 330-237-1235. That's a direct number to me at the Greater Akron Chamber. My email address is rdjournett, RDEJOURNETT at greaterakronchamber.org. And I'll be more than happy to assist.
Great. So thank you for tuning in today, where we talked about diversity and inclusion with Mr. Robert DeJournett. And I am your host, Leah Love. Thank you for tuning in, where we have a global outlook from a local view. Have a great week.
Forum 360 is brought to you by John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron, Blue Green, Electric Impulse Communications, and Forum 360 supporters.